Hey, Straw here. First of all, forgive my nasal speech, I'm still recuperating from a flu. But welcome to a quick guide on how to create an ESL file for your personal mashups with a little introduction to Fo4 edit as requested. Let's start Fo4 edit. Let me delete the file real quick, never mind about that. Right click, select none, and open the Fo4 ESM. That contains all the base entries, all the base references from the vanilla game without the DLC, and that's where we want to grab our template from to add mashups to our game. It's done loading. Let's expand Fo4 ESM and let's expand armor. Quick explanation. Here you have all the armors and clothing in the vanilla game, all the entries to it. Each entry has a unique form ID, which serves as an address and lets the game know, or lets the file structure know, okay, this is where that specific entry is stored. Important later on. Let's choose the Vault 111 suit as a template to add our mashups in. We right click it and we have the option to copy it as a new record or as an override. If we copy it as an override somewhere, we would replace the Vault 111 suit. We don't want to replace it. We would just want to use the entry as a template to make our own. So copy as new record into. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. We give it a unique name. Mashup 1 as opposed to Vault 111 suit. And we copy this record into, where do we copy it into? Into a new file, into an ESL. Because we want to have it lightweight. Okay. The ESL needs to have a name. We call it my mashups. And we're going to minimize all the Fo4 ESM categories. And we see my mashups ESL is here with a file header. And our armor entry that we copied based on the Fo4 Vault 111 jumpsuit. Now I'm quickly gonna go through all the important information here. I'm going to ignore a lot that can be something for later guides, but not for this one. Editor ID, this one always needs to be unique for every editor ID in the game. While we copied it, we already gave it a unique one. All good here. Object bounds, ignore it. Preview transform, ignore it. Full name, give it a name that represents your mashup. It's the name of the item in your Pip-Boy, in your inventory. That'll show up there. My mashup 1. Male world model, female world model is the Go model. What is a Go model? It's the mesh loaded in-game as a preview when you enter any workstation or in a transfer window, and it's also loaded when you drop your mashup on the floor. You don't want to decorate the world with your mashups, so we can ignore that functionality. Let's get rid of it. Right click, remove, or left click, delete on your keyboard. Now a slot. Your mashup is going to be a body replacer. That's what I assume, so it needs to have the slot 33 body. The Vault 111 jumpsuit occupies a couple of other slots. Maybe you want to use these slots to put some additional decoration items or whatnot, accessories. So right click, edit, and uncheck all these slots. It just needs to be 33 body. It needs to be a body replacer. When you equip an item that is assigned the slot 33, the game will remove your naked body and replace it with that mashup, which obviously includes a body, or hopefully includes a body, else your jar will come up naked. Human race, alright. Some keywords, not gonna go into detail here, just for reference, MA armor lining, which goes along with the AP slot, AP armor lining, makes sure that you can craft some armor on that clothing and upgrade it a little. Why not? Leave it in there. Also leave the rest in there. It doesn't really matter. Description, again, needs to be present, but doesn't need to actually contain anything. Well, not again, but later on again. IN and R rules, remove them, not needed for your mashup. Models. I will get back to this. It's pretty important and our next step. First of all, let's finish the rest of the entries here. Data, how much is the mashup worth if you sell it to the vendor in caps? How much does it weigh? You can all edit that. What is the armor rating? Might as well give it some armor, right? Because you're gonna wear it, and if someone attacks you, you don't want to insta-die. Here you can add some resistances and beef up your mashup. You can add a new category, double click and choose another resistance, like, I don't know, poison resist. Give it 100, because why not? Or just remove it, doesn't really matter. This is how you work with that category. Now, object template contains information of data and stuff loaded on your item when it's first spawned in the game. In this case, the entry just makes sure that a no misc OMOD is loaded on your armor lining slot. It doesn't actually need it, but doesn't hurt to keep it in. Now I promise to get back to the model entry. This is a reference to a different form ID. And we have here the address 001F0E0. Let's actually put that up here and have a look at what this is. This is the form ID search. We took it from here, enter. And we see it leads us into our Fallout 4 ESM, into our vanilla file, into the category Armor Add-on, to Armor Add-on Vault 111 Jumpsuit. And this is where you have the information about the NIF file that is loaded and put on your character in game. So very important. Here you would need to set the path of your NIF file, but obviously not in that entry in the Fallout 4 ESM. But what we want to do is we want to also copy that as a new record into our ESL file. Again, we give it a unique name, AA, my mashup 1. We load it into my mashups ESL. It's now present. We don't want to make another new ESL. We're going to minimize that again, and we see a new category edit, armor add-on, with a new entry edit, my mashup 1, still containing the original information from the Vault 111 suit. Now, I told you this needs to be updated. I assume your mashup is going to be for females. In this case, ignore the male world model as well as the male first person model. However, the female world model, the third person model, needs to have the path to your NIF that contains your mashup, however you created it. Usually, or well, not usually, the game assumes that we are in the meshes folder, so whatever path you put here will be folders inside your meshes folder. Normally modders set it up like this: a folder that represents your name, then your project, and in there your mashup, your NIF or whatever, .NIF. Again, this path needs to be adjusted to your folders where your NIF is actually located. Female first person model, if you open your Pip-Boy or you show your hands on your weapon, you will see a Vault 111 suit. May not be appropriate what you want. You can just replace it with something. I just copy paste it off screen. Actors, characters, character assets, first person female body.nif. It's just a naked body, shows arms without a vault suit and perhaps any other accessories that you loaded that occupy slots that show in first person by default, like for example rings or whatnot, gloves. What else is important? Nothing. You can keep all the additional race data as default, the footstep sounds as default. Remove the bone data, get rid of it always. It screws up things. You don't want it, you don't need it. Delete, period. Always. Now we are going back into our armor entry because we do remember that the referenced model in our armor entry is still the vanilla armor add-on Vault 111 suit. We need to change that reference now to not reference the one up here, but to actually reference our template copied armor add-on entry that we have just adjusted with all our information. So we right click this one, edit, and now we're gonna put in here the 8-digit address of our armor add-on, which we want to reference. It's FE00801. Okay. Fo4 edit automatically resolutes it to the name, the editor ID that is given, and identifies it as an armor add-on. And that's how we know that it worked. Now, if we close Fo4 edit and save that ESL file in the upcoming window, we have everything ready to spawn our mashup in-game using the console commands or Dave's ESP Explorer. But if we want to load or craft our mashup from the chem station, we need to have 2 additional entries. Let's do that here real quick. I'm not going to copy it from the base game file. I'm going to create it as new just so you see how the steps are. Right click your ESL, add. Then you need to add a category first. In this case, we want to add the category keywords. Here it is, keyword, category edit. There we go. We right click, add a keyword as a content. It asks us for a unique form ID and a unique address. It automatically takes the one from your header, which is the next free one. It's always okay. Don't care about that. Okay. Now we have an empty keyword entry that contains no information, just a header file. So we need to fill it out with the information that we need here in order to add a chem station recipe. This keyword represents the category in your chem station, the name, the folder that then contains your mashups to craft. It needs a unique editor ID, just like everything in the game. Let's do KW my mashups. This will be generic for all your mashups, even if you do more mashups than just one. Oh, I see. Did a little boo-boo there. Yeah, let's further fill this out. Color needs to be all 255. So I assume I'm just a follower. Not gonna experiment here. Type, right click, add, double click, choose recipe filter and full name, add the name of the category that'll show up in the chem station. My mashups. In order to connect this newly found category in our chem station with our armor, like populating that category with our armor entry, we need a constructible object. We also going to add that by right clicking on the ESL, add constructible object. The category is created. We right click the category, add constructible object. Again, okay. And now we have our empty entry for a constructible object, and we need to fill it with some data. Gonna do that real quick for you. Unique editor ID CO, cause constructible. My mashup 1. Doesn't need pickup sounds. Components you can add if you want the mashup to cost like some leather or cloth or whatnot. But I mean, it's your mashups. You don't need a lore-friendly crafting process, so components, conditions you can ignore. However, description, there needs to be a description. At least the entry needs to be present. It doesn't actually need to be filled with any data, but it needs to be added. Else it'll not show or actually crash your game. Created object. Here, right-click add. We have an empty or null reference. We need to give the address to the object that through this process is being created. And in this case, we want to create our armor, which has this address. So let's just add this address here. FE00800. There we go. The armor is created when this recipe is completed. Workbench keyword. That tells the game in which workbench this whole recipe is present, and it needs to be the chem station, of course. Now, how do we find it? Oops. Right click add. We double click. We choose the drop down menu and we see all the keywords that the game has. Now, press W for workbench. Scroll a bit down past the weapons until you find workbench ChemLab. 000102158. That's the address. You can also just type it in now that we know. It'll always be the same also for you, since it references the base game files. Now, category. Remember, our keyword that we created represents the category in the chem station. So that's what we're going to reference here, the address to our keyword. We want one object created. Priority doesn't matter. So we need to fill in that data too. All right, that is it. That is all you need to bring your mashup in-game in a unique ESL. When you close Fo4 edit, it'll ask you to save that ESL. We do that and it's automatically saved in our data folder. Now, if you want to add more mashups to your game, and I'm sure you want that, we load my mashups ESL again. In Fo4 edit, we wait until everything is loaded. It won't just load my mashups ESL, but also all the files that are referenced in the file header required as master. And in this case, it's Fo4 ESM, which automatically loads with that exe file. So that's why we have three things here and not just our ESL. Anyways, let's quickly show you how to do the second mashup. We need to copy these three entries. The keyword entry is generic for your category. Doesn't need to be copied for an additional mashup, but these three entries would need to be copied. So we're going to do that again with the same process. We select them all with CTRL. We copy as new record into, and then Fo4 edit gives us a couple of options to batch rename the editor IDs, because remember, each editor ID needs to be unique. You can do that later on by manually renaming them, just pressing OK, or you can actually use that feature. Enter a prefix that should be removed. No, we don't want a prefix removed. Enter a suffix that should be removed. Sure, why not remove one? Enter a prefix that should be added. Nope, we don't need to add a prefix. Enter a suffix that should be added. Let's put 2. Okay, and where should the stuff go? Into our ESL. Here we go. Now we have exact copies of our entries, but already renamed on the editor ID with a 2 in the end instead of the 1. We obviously need to update the information, else it'll literally be just a copy of your first mashup in game, and why have 2 of the same? Again, here, most important, an armor add-on, the path to your NIF. You would change it to your second mashup. Everything else can remain the same. In the armor entry, you want to change the name that shows in-game for your mashup, also to whatever your mashup represents. In my case, just for reference, my mashup 2. It you also need to update the address, the reference, to your armor add-on, because armor is referencing armor add-on. And in this case, you see it still says mashup 1 because it's a copy of that 1 file referencing the 1, but we want the 2 file referencing the 2. So we right click, edit. We see it's 804 at the end, so we can just replace it here, press OK, and it'll automatically detect. Okay. It changed, now it's AA my mashup 2. That is correctly referenced. And that is all you need to change in the armor entry for an additional one. Full name and the model reference. In the constructible object, you need to, or you want to also change the created object, else your newly found recipe will just create your old mashup again. So also here edit, and armor is 805, our second one. We change the address to 5. And it will create our second mashup. The rest can stay as is. And now if we close and save it, we have 2 mashups available in our chem station, loading the mashups in game. Yeah, so far for that. If you have any questions, hit me up on Discord. And I'm going to put that ESL file as a download below that video, just in case you want to use it and don't need to go through all the process that I've shown you here. But perhaps it's a learning experience. Whatever. See you around.